He just blew my back out on the side of I-20.
All right. Buenas tardes. Thanks for joining us again today for the second presentation of our Grants in Aid project. We are grateful for your presence. We will be recording this talk so that we may share it via our YouTube channel at a later time. And so if you wish to turn off your camera, please do so now. I am Dr. Gabriela Baeza Ventura, Associate Professor in the Department of Hispanic Studies, Executive Editor at Arte Público Press, and Co-Director of the US Latino Digital Humanities Center, #USLDH at the University of Houston. On behalf of Arte Público, Recovering the US Hispanic Literary Heritage Program, and USLDH, we welcome you to this talk. As many of you know, APP and Recovery, two important forces in the field of US Latino studies, were founded and are directed by Dr. Nicolás Canelos. His vision to establish a nonprofit press in the historical archival program stemmed from a social justice need to document the legacy of a Latina, Latino, Latinx culture, language, and literature in the United States. To date, APP has published over 650 books. This includes fiction, nonfiction, YA, and children's literature, and Recovery has located over 1,400 newspapers and digitized thousands of records that document the presence of the Latinx people in this land that we now know as the United States. The social justice need continues to this day as we fight against the erasure of our bodies and language on a daily basis. Therefore, the need to create a center that could use these resources for digital scholarship was and is the US Latino DH Center 6 years ago with the support of the Mellon Foundation. We are happy to report that we have made important strides in the field. We have grown our team to include Dr. Lorena Gothero and former postdoc Dr. Linda Garcia Merchant to our team. Together, we have organized talks and workshops in digital humanities, DH, and social justice. We presented at conferences across the US, continue to train and mentor students and faculty from all academic levels, as well as community members as US Latino practice, create digital projects and data sets. We have awarded 16 grants in aid for US Latinx digital humanities projects and training, and this we find has solidified our USLDH mission to continue working and supporting research on US Latinx written legacy. We invite you to visit our website, Arte Público Press, for more information, to follow us on social media, and to use the hashtag USLDH to live tweet our lectures and to tweet about US Latino DX. Before I introduce our presenters, I would like to go over the logistics for Q&A. We invite you to use the chat function to type in your questions or comments as they are speaking. After all the presentations, you will be invited to ask your question by unmuting yourself, or we will read the questions for you if that's what you would like for us to do. So we will follow the order from the program that we shared for the presentation. So the first group of presenting today is made up of Cristina Pérez Jiménez and Bret Maney. They will be talking to us. The title of their project is The Latinx Catskills. So I'll let you guys take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're really delighted to be here as part of the USLDH-Mellon's Grants in Aid Showcase to speak about our funded project, the Latinx Catskill, and also to hear from other grant recipients. Before we begin, we want to extend our enormous thanks to the amazing USLDH team, including Gabi, Carolina, Lorena, and Linda, whose wisdom and vision have done and are doing so much to build and sustain the Latinx digital humanities. So thank you very much. The Latinx Catskills, which are so little known or remembered today, were an important social and cultural feature of New York Latinx life from roughly the late 19th century to the 1960s and 1970s. In the 1960s, on any given summer weekend, as the New York Times reported, At least, quote, 5,000 Latinos of various backgrounds and classes would seek refuge from the teeming New York City streets, traveling to the widely popular long strip of Latino-owned resorts, motels, villas, and other small lodgings in the foothills of the Catskills. As the Times put it, quote, less than 2 hours ride from New York City, 75 to 100 villas or casas express their own brand of countrified Puerto Rico by way of East Harlem, the Bronx, and Patterson, New Jersey. The area, commonly known as the Spanish Alps or even the Puerto Rican Alps, was, as the Times translated it for its readership, the so-called Latin counterpart to the much better known and more culturally prominent Jewish Borscht Belt. The Borscht Belt, which lives on today, justly celebrated in academic projects and coffee table books and hit shows like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, is very much remembered, right? And it's part of our collective cultural memory. Yet if the Jewish Catskills survives in cultural memory and scholarly investigation as a site of ethnic identity and American belonging, by contrast, almost no attention has been paid to the long-standing Latinx inflection of the Catskills region. Our public digital humanities project, the Latinx Catskills, recovers, documents, and analyzes this important and understudied aspect of New York Latinx history, resituating the Catskills region as a generative space for New York Latinx identities and cultures. In doing so, the project concomitantly revalues rest, leisure, and rural recreation as key, if unduly neglected, components of New York Latinidad. An experience which to me is so vividly captured in this photograph where we see a group of Latinos in the Catskills eating and drinking and smiling and socializing around a roasted pig, a traditional lechon, in the great outdoors. As our project uncovers, the rugged natural landscape of the Catskills region was a consistent adjunct to urban experiences of New York City Latinx life throughout much of the 20th century.
My co-principal investigator, Cristina, has provided us with some of the coordinates and stories of the geographical space we're conceptualizing as the Latinx Catskills. I'm now going to share with viewers how we're conceiving of, documenting, and exploring this Latinx space in the digital sphere. Our project illuminates this history and space through a two-pronged digital approach, structured around first, the building of a digitized archive of significant Latinx Catskills sites with associated primary sources and material objects made accessible through a digital map. And second, a series of what we're calling tours that interpret and tell the story of these sites and objects. The archive's digital mapping interface, which you see here, preserves and reconstructs our understanding of the Latinx Catskills for both the scholarly audience and the broader Latinx community by organizing information geographically about the scores of now defunct resorts, hotels, restaurants, villas, and private homes that served as a summer vacation network for a Latinx clientele. The geolocated database powering this map currently runs to nearly 60 sites of interest. These include lodgings and resorts catering to Latinos of all means and budgets, while some exuded an imposing air of formality and luxury, with glistening dance halls, casinos, and tennis courts. A previous slide gave you a glimpse of this. Others had a much more rustic, working class flavor, focusing on outdoor and family activities, unpretentious yet hearty family-style meals, and modest accommodations with shared bathroom facilities. The changing ownerships, menus, and clientele of the Latinx Catskills that we've mapped in our database and project offer a snapshot of the demographic and economic shifts of Latinx New York. Our interactive map allows website visitors to plot their own itineraries through the region. Map pins connect visitors to textual descriptions and a multimedia-rich display of archival information related to these sites, including advertisements, brochures, photographs, audio clips, and relevant news coverage. While our sources come predominantly from historical US Hispanic newspapers and archival repositories. In the next phase of the project, and as pandemic-related closures at libraries and archives fade, we hope to incorporate more data from local historical societies in the Catskills region, as well as begin collecting oral histories and drawing upon family records. The second major component of the project aggregates individual sites into what we are calling tours, telling the stories of key moments and figures in the history of the Latinx Catskills using description and multimodal storytelling. You see one example here. We envision these tours as a scholarly resource, but also as literal tours that people curious about the Latinx Catskills can use to guide them in their discovery of the region. To this end, sites making up the tours include practical information, such as street addresses, current conditions of the site, is it extant, in whole or in part, and access restrictions, is it private property, for example. The platform choice we made for the Latinx Catskills was a key driver and an important decision in making this kind of functionality possible. While initially we had thought of Omeka as a natural choice for our platform, we were dissatisfied with some of its limitations integrating mapping and thematic components, and we switched to CurateScape, a set of plugins and theme for Omeka designed by the Center for Public History and Digital Humanities at Cleveland State University. For a place-based project like this, CurateScape, derived from curated landscape, struck us as a happy compromise between the archival robustness offered by Omeka and the affordances of place-based storytelling through maps offered by other programs. Together, the digital map and the tours we've created allow users to begin visualizing the historical and spatial extension of the Latinx Catskills and explore its cultural history as an important incubator, not only of New York Latinx social identities, but also of Latinx expressive cultures, especially literature and music.
And one such tour excavating this cultural memory is the one we've created on Latinx writers in the Catskills, which features, among other sites, the Catskills Mountain House, where Cuban revolutionary Jose Marti conceived of and drafted of his last and most highly regarded poetry collection, Versos Sencillos, in 1890. Other stops on the tour include the homes of the writers Ángel del Río and his wife, Amelia Agostini, who hosted Federico Garcia Lorca, who also was inspired by the landscape, writing their important poems. The tour also stops in the house of Jose Juan Tablada, a Mexican writer, which he and his second wife, Nina Cabrera, built in the 1920s, embodying many of their aesthetic ideals. And I want to show you now what the entry for Tablada's home is an example of what our project looks like. So each entry features a narrative text that describes the site and its importance. The narrative is all based on original primary research and is supported then by images and other forms of media. For example, here you're looking at a sketch that Tablada himself did of the interior of his home, which interestingly can be compared then with present-day images of his home, right? And the house was built by Mexican carpenters and features traditional elements of Mexican woodworking and panels, desks, bookshelves, and other built-in furniture, as well as noteworthy Japanese influences drawn from his aesthetic interest. Then at the bottom, you can see also some images of Tablada and his wife relaxing and enjoying themselves in the Catskills. At the bottom of each entry, we have location information as well as the metadata information. So overall, together with a searchable digitized archive, the creation of these tours seek to offer a narrative panorama and multimedia resources for understanding the long-standing presence in the region of Latinos. The Latinx Catskill does offer access to an unduly forgotten setting of Latinx culture while broadening dominant narratives of 20th century New York Latinidad, which have traditionally focused on urban experiences of hardship and toil. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Let me change the viewing here. All right. Just bear with me because I changed it. Okay, perfect. All right. Yes. Wonderful. The next set of presenters include Josephine Talamantez, Alberto Pulido, Jaimes, Jenny Bustamante, and Cassandra Gonzalez. Their project is titled Tomasa Tommy Camarillo Archive.
Off mute. I need to clarify that Jennifer and Cassandra were working with us this summer and they're no longer working with us. And Lucas Cruz is here with us on the presentation today. So Alberto, you want to start this?
I can start us off. Just really quickly, thank you all for being here. My name is Valerie. Can everyone hear us? Thumbs up. Can y'all hear us?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry, our
Yes.
Wi-Fi has been very difficult, so bear with us. I'm Valerie Jaimes. I'm a confidential administrative assistant here at the museum. This is Josie, as you all know, and Lucas Cruz, and we're joined with Dr. Alberto Pulido as well. Just really quickly wanted to send out our appreciation for the support from University of Houston, USLDH, and Grants and Aid team. And with that, I will go ahead and pass it off to Dr. Pulido.
I want to take you back to April 22nd, 1970, when a fast-paced procession of students filing out of their Chicano Studies courses at San Diego City College. Only minutes earlier, fellow student Mario Solis had burst into the classroom of Professor Olbledo in order to publicly proclaim that a construction crew, along with their equipment, were presently underneath the newly erected San Diego Coronado Bridge, about to lay down blacktop for a parking lot for the newly proposed highway patrol station in their historic neighborhood and Chicano barrio known as Logan Heights. Led by students leaders, Rico Bueno, Josephine Talamantez, David Rico, Angie Avila, these student activists quickly mobilized around a red alert call to action that brought together numerous other students, women, men, families, young, elderly, community activists, that by the end of this historic day, 200 to 300 people strong had successfully evicted the construction crew and had occupied the land. As Chicano muralist Victor Ochoa says, they actually took over the bulldozers to flatten out the ground. They started planting nopales, magueys, and flowers, along with a Chicano flag being raised on a telephone pole. This impressive gathering under the bridge coalesced into a land takeover and served as a catalyst behind the creation of the Chicano Park Steering Committee, who negotiated with city-state officials demanding that this land be donated to the community. And by the end of the 12th day, the city of San Diego conceded and agreed to acquire the land from the state of California for the establishment of a park for the people that would be known as Chicano Park.
Next slide. So all of these slides that you've been seeing are from the archive of Tomasa Camarillo. And what you're looking at right here is it as we begin collecting. She is a local archivist and in 1970 began collecting anything and everything that had to do with Chicano Park and the neighborhood of Logan Heights. And I'm showing you some photographs here. On the right, you can see part of one of her rooms that is filled with binders where she began collecting. And I asked her one day why she began collecting. And her response was, anytime that we had to deal with the city, the county, or the state, we had to have proof of what we were talking about. And in that process is where she began collecting. So these are some images from the archives, and we're working here with Lucas Cruz, and I'm gonna let him kind of articulate what we're looking at. Lucas is the grandson of Tomasa Camarillo, and he is now working with the museum and will soon be fulfilling a educational pursuit of archivist and librarianship. And so I'm going to turn it over to him so you can see what he grew up in.
Yeah, so as Josie stated, my grandmother, Tomasa Camarillo, she's been involved with the park for 52 years. She was there during the takeover. And anytime I ask her about it, she always tells me that she stayed in her position. She was asked to take care of one area and she never left. And within that spirit of self-determination, she stayed around the park for 52 years. And it was through her collections that we've been able to successfully negotiate with the city and the state. You know, as Josie said, more often than not, the state officials suffer from amnesia, especially when they transition to a new position. And with that, when we have this paper trail of showing, for instance, for us, Chicano Park Day, we have an increase of police costs due to our community being racially profiled. And because of that, we're able to have this paper trail that she's saved. And without that information, we wouldn't be able to, you know, make our arguments that we do today. But what's beautiful about the archive is her goal was never to give it over to an institution or a school, even though they've been pursuing them. For her, it was making sure it was in the hands of the community. So I remember growing up and I would wake up, you know, trying to go get my cereal, and all of a sudden there's like 10 students in the house and they're all going through the archive, because that was the purpose. If anybody ever reached out to her, she would always make sure that she made it open and available to anybody at any time. You know, my grandmother Tommy, she grew up on a dairy. She lived in a chicken coop when she was younger, and she was never able to successfully finish her educational journey, but that didn't stop her from learning how to do these processes. And now, despite that, her collection is being sought after by many people, and she's committed it to make sure that it's accessible here, where else than the Chicano Park Museum and Cultural Center. And it's critical for us as the next generation to have access to these documents, because as we're, you know, stepping into the reins of leadership, for instance, myself, I'm the chairman of the Chicano Park Steering Committee, and I actually follow after my grandmother. It's important for us to have this historical information so we know exactly the context of what was being fought for, what was going on. So that way, again, navigating these institutions, we have that historical memory.
I think it's important for people to understand that Chicano Park is a unique park. The land that Chicano Park is on is state-owned property. When we occupied and took over the park, the negotiation became the city was then leasing the land from the state of California. And we were successful in getting a 30-year lease. That lease expired in 2000, and up to this date, 2022, we're still dealing with a month-to-month lease. But as Lucas said, we are now negotiating with the state of California and the city of San Diego to implement or reinstate another 50-year lease. What you're looking at right now are really, when we came to the United States Latino Digital Archives, we were trying to begin the documentation of Tommy's archive. And what we settled on was looking at the posters of the Chicano Park Day celebration, and that's what you're looking at here. And you'll see, we're going to show you some slides in the timeline in a minute, and I need you to clarify that the quality of the slides at that point were not not that sharp. And with the help of USLDH, we were able to purchase a brand new high quality scanner that Lucas is now working with in terms of the collection. So I think we're gonna kind of hit part of the timeline now.
Yes, and really quickly, I just want to also speak to the relationship that it was able to create with other institutions such as the University of San Diego. Myself, I visited Dr. Pulido's classes, Intro to Chicano Studies, and worked about with 30 students, I think. And we were able to collect a bunch of data and oral narratives and histories and videos, and we were able to try to put them into the timeline. So I will also let Pulido speak a little bit about what this page means as to the relationship. Pulido, did you want to go ahead and expand on that in terms of the archives and the exhibition?
Sure.
We can't hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay, how about now?
Go.
I'm sorry. This is an exhibit that was curated with our director of the museum, along with many people in the community, and with the generous support of Tomasa being able to share with us the posters. And this was just like one step and multiple steps that lead us to where we are now. And as Valerie was saying, I am the chair of ethnic studies here at the University of San Diego. We are always mistaken with UCSD. We're a small Catholic school. And we got our students involved in my Chicano studies classes to help with this digitization. And thanks to Valerie, because this was above my pay grade. And so we did some amazing work. So this is the timeline. It's still a draft, but we just wanted to share with you a couple of slides. You know, we're looking at a 52-year collection. And I want you to recognize that the early pieces were pretty much drawn. This is the incredible work of Victor Ochoa. This was the 5th Chicano Park activity. And what's important in terms of the consciousness here is that bridge that came to destroy our community. Now we were giving it, as they said in Spanish, el chingazo, because this became a publication. And that was the name of it, el chingazo. And so you see the pillar now becoming our fist to empower our community. And again, the quality is something done by hand, and it was done quickly because this is the very, very early days of the event. Now, let me also clarify two things. Usually the third Saturday of the month is when, third Saturday of April is when we have our annual celebration. We've been down 2 years because of COVID, but we're planning to come back. So please join us April 2023, the third Saturday. And that's how these posters would emerge. Every time we had an annual celebration, we would pick a theme and then we would have this. So that's exactly what we do. Now, you can see the change now. We started to get other artists involved. This is the incredible work of Rubén de Anda. And yes, we did have the Indios Voladores at Chicano Park. Rubén de Anda did several of these posters. He's now deceased. We're trying to reach out to his widow to get more background information. But these things become now like collectors because there's very few of them. And thank God Tommy has a whole collection and we have them in the archive. And of course, our objective with the grant is to make this public and digitize all of it. And I think I only have one more poster to share due to time. Here we are back with Tommy. This was done by Patricia Cruz, and that is actually Patricia's son. And beautiful image in honor of Tommy. Tommy is very short. So this really a wonderful image. And you see then on her shirt, the same image that you saw with regards to the pillar becoming a source of empowerment. Okay, and there's many, many more, but we just wanted to give you a quick glimpse of what it looks like.
And what we're doing right now is, like I said, we're opening up the Chicano Park Museum. And Lucas is now working with us very closely, and we have the wonderful scanner due to our support from your organization. And we're going to be seeking additional funding to archive her entire collection. There's also another facility in the local area that we're vying to obtain, and that will become the permanent Logan Heights Chicano Park archive, or it will be the Tomasa Camarillo archives. I think the next slide.
Yes, I can speak on this one.
Yeah.
So with that being said, we also wanted to touch upon what we plan to do with the archives. Of course, Lucas mentioned the importance of accessibility in the hands of the people, as this is our history and our stories. So as what you're seeing right here is a collaboration between the museum, the Department of Ethnic Studies at USD, and the Chicano Park Steering Committee. This is the turning wheel bus, which Dr. Pulido is the director of. And we turn it into mobile classrooms, local gallery spaces. It's the huge aspect of it is that it's mobile, and we can join any other different neighborhoods or communities that we wish. So with that being said, we also have purchased some interactive screens, which is what we were trying to log in on earlier. We had some difficulties, but they're also mobile, and we plan to do workshops and have them accessible to the community, to youth, especially in our upcoming announcement, which we'll touch on the next slide, but we want to have it also for our opening for the community to access as well. So I don't know if Pulido, you would like to expand on that as well?
What is your next slide? Is it our surprise?
Yes.
Okay, so can we just say a couple of things? This project came through the school. As you know, when it comes to our issues, we kind of become second thought, but they gave me the money. It's a long story. I hope you can recognize the murals of the park as what decorates the museum, the bus. And I hope you can also appreciate the Olin symbol, because we have the Olin symbol not only in our logo, because we want to speak to the question of movement and the fact that the bus is moving, and therefore we're providing that history to our community. The kids there at Sherman Heights, we had a wonderful summer program with them, and they were making pillars. Valerie was one of our instructors, and it is just delightful because this was the very first time we got to use it as a classroom because it was post-COVID. Okay, next slide.
And you can join us in El Paso, Texas. We'll be there at Lincoln Park on the 16th.
Can I say a little more? I thought the next slide was going to show the pictures of the. Anyway, quick thing. Lincoln Park, El Paso, Texas. It's kind of our little Chicano park, sister park. The bus is leaving next Friday, and the big event at El Paso is on Sunday. If you've never been there, wonderful event. It's hotter than hell, but we have the Matachinas come out, and it's just a wonderful experience. And we always get the award for the group that came the furthest away. So love it. And it's expensive on gas. Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, last thing before we close, I just wanted to clarify so you understand. I mean, we speak because we know, but the Chicano Park Steering Committee are the stewards of the park. And the stewards of the park are responsible for taking care of anything and everything that happens in the park. And we are working with the city of San Diego and the state of California on a memorandum of understanding to put that in perpetuity. Most of us are members of the Chicano Park Steering Committee, but now this other effort that began in 2015, we are now opening the Chicano Park Museum and Cultural Center that will include our archive. And our opening date is October 8th, and we'll activate inside the museum with an exhibition. And when we get offline, you can see our gallery. I mean, that's behind us. And we'll activate the exhibition inside the museum and then outside in Chicano Park.
Yes, behind us is the gallery. I can show y'all real quick. It's just, we're in here. We tried to zoom in on our other screens. These are the screens that we're talking about, but they're movable. So yeah.
Anyway, that's where we're at. Our next steps, well, our challenges, we've kind of gone through the challenges here with you in terms of internet connection and, quality screens and quality slides. We're in a better place now. But I think with regard to next steps are to really seek additional funding and to archive the entire, scan and collect the entire collection. Her whole house is filled with those binders that we showed you. What is amazing to me is the thoroughness of the details that she collected. If we wanted anything about anything, Lucas can tell you, we found slides for the beginning of the kiosco. It took us 7 years to negotiate that. 7 years just to negotiate. Anyway, we could go on and on and on, but that story is there, and those images and all the documents are here, and we hope to complete the scanning and collection. And then Lucas here will be in charge of the Tomasa Camarillo collection. Él es Dios.
So much, you all. Thank you. This is really empowering. So thank you. We're going to go ahead and jump to our third presenters, but we'll have the opportunity to talk a little bit more about each of these projects. We invite the presenters to please share any information, any links to their projects, to the organizations, so that we have them in the chat, and that they're made available to everyone as soon as possible. The third presenters are Osa de la Riva and Erendina Delgadillo, and they'll be talking about the project titled Las Mujeres de la Riva.
Hi, Erendina, are you here?
I am.
Oh, good. Hi.
Just, excuse me.
I just want to say one thing. Thank you, Erendina, for being here, because I have a hard time even reading the chats on the Zoom. So the technical part definitely challenging. So yeah, thank you. I wanted to say we're speaking on a lonely land here. Give thanks for that. And
There we are. Can you all see the screen? Apologies in advance before we get going. I'm about to, I think I'm on the verge of a cold, so my head is just a little bit fuzzier than usual, and my nose is a little bit stuffed, so apologies for having to hear a squeaky and muffled voice. Yeah, I want to reiterate the deep thanks to the USLDH team for this opportunity. It really was, I think, an education for both Osa and I. It was a deep partnership, and I'm really excited to see, as often happens, the plans that we had laid out didn't quite come to fruition. There's so much more to be done, but I'm really excited at the sort of seed that we've planted, both within Osa and the full team around her, that's continuing to work through her family history through the lens of her experience. And yeah, so we also had a partner in this project, associate professor in the Mexican American and Latino department at the University of Texas at Austin, Maria Cotera. This is her site. So she very generously, she's been working with Osa for a while, who has a collection of family history that she's been, how long have you been saving material from your family, Osa?
since I was about 7.
There's quite a bit to dig through. This really is a family history project. We looked at 4 generations of the La Riva women, highlighting 7 of, 7 people overall within Osa's family, the De La Riva family, who have in really interesting and exciting ways intersected with Chicano history here in California. They're from the Hayward, Stockton area up in Northern California, Central. And it was an opportunity to, through the deep sort of work that Osa has been doing for a few decades now, establishing her through her artistry, right, primarily through film, establishing a series of principles called Mujerista principles that guide her work. It feels a little odd to talk about you, Osa, while you are here, which was an interesting aspect of this work. It's a living history, right? Some of the women that we focused on, have passed, and a number of them are still alive. And Osa was the primary, source of information for all of the material that we were looking at. And so it was for me a new way of working to, I am a curator of history, right? So I'm not quite I'm used to interpreting information through objects, and very often, we're not working with folks who are still living. And so to work with OSA to find that sweet spot of, sort of being transparent and vulnerable in a way that will hopefully be helpful for next generations to sort of understand what fueled their work, what some of the challenges were, right, and how they overcame collectively or as individuals, and still finding ways to be respectful, and yeah, just the sort of sweet spot of transparency, knowing that some of these folks are still living, and there are sort of sensitive family aspects to the work. So we were looking through OSA's storage unit, which is OSA lives in Santa Cruz, and the storage unit is in San Leandro. When the project started, I was still in Northern California and driving. That changed pretty quickly. So OSA really was the one we did a few sort of deep dives in the storage collection, trying to find the storage unit, trying to find some of the objects that make up this site. And then after that, because I was so far, we, with the equipment that we used, that we purchased with the funds that we received from this grant opportunity, were primarily, a scanner, a camera, external hard drives, and all of that equipment OSA was using. She was the one who was scanning. She was the one who was, scanning all of that material, making sure that it was aligned and sort of working for this site.
With a lot of help from our friends. Yeah.
So Chicana por Mi Raza is a public history site, available. There are sort of course, back-end areas that are just for people who are, gathering metadata about particular Chicana women. It's focusing, you can see here, and this is Maria Cotera's project. She leads it. There are a number of deep dive sort of biographies into individual women, and then of course records, specific objects associated with those stories. So as I mentioned, we're telling the story of 7 Mujeres de la Riva, Mujeres from the De la Riva family. A grandmother, Angie. We used the timeline tool that you all shared with us down here to just give a little bit more information about each of the women that we're focusing on. So grandmother, Angie, a series of tias, of aunts, Lucy de la Riva, Celia de la Riva, Osa's mother, Lola, who started in the 1970s, one of the first Chicano art centers down in Long Beach called Centro de Arte. And of course, Osa herself, and then her niece, her sister, and her niece, Liliana Maya de la Riva. So, yeah, Osa, is there anything that you'd like to share about what the process was like, or?
Yes, I think again, giving big props out to Erendina for coming through, having a professional and a younger perspective on culture and gathering and respecting culture. And also, I think it's important to work with folks that definitely have closer politics, and I'm noticing now, even in what I was learning about metadata and especially through this organization that's just awesome. I mean, I know the Mellon folks are funding this project, but the staff and the people that I've been meeting through the US LDH has been wonderful. And Erendina works partly with the Oakland Museum. And so being able to meet museum people and go in like that. I was mainly a poet and became a filmmaker. And like I said, since I was 7, I've been collecting poetry. And my mom, like Erendina said, was one of the first, definitely one of the first Chicana artists during the 70s that actually opened her own home, her actual home, and it turned into the Centro de Arte in Long Beach. And so she sat on the board of Concilio de Arte Popular, CAP, and that's how she knew all the other Chicano directors from San Diego and Sacramento and Fresno and, self-help graphics, all of that. So I kind of, being the eldest, I kind of tagged along with her and helped her out. She had me when she was 15, 16. So we're kind of like sisters. And that top picture, for example, the Santa Cruz Sentinel came out on April 1st. They put us on the front page because we were fighting. Well, we still are. My mom's bedridden, but she's still an activist and chingona, and she won't put up with any stuff, even though it's COVID time. Sometimes if people come in with an attitude, she'll just say, no, you can't work on my body. So she's still feisty and speaking back and being an activist for elder rights. And so my tia, her older sister, for example, was like my second mom, and that was Aunt Sally. And she grew up, yeah, there's the picture of Aunt Sally right there on the next one, the green or blue. Yeah. She was closety, but she was, what she calls homophile. And I think that was one thing that shaped all of this project and continues to shape it a lot. In fact, my own writing with Mujerista movie making. The idea again of Olin and going back to our own unconscious memory, collective memory about how we feel our, pre-Columbian or before colonization, maybe what were some matrilineal roots and parts of our culture. So we kind of connected with the Olmecs because they didn't have any bodies or genitalia. So I thought, well, maybe 51% that they could have been females. So our first little video was the Olmeca rap in 1990. Well, we did it in the 80s, but my mom's centro was from the 70s. And then Aunt Sally, she helped start several Chicano healthcare centers and centros over in the Bay Area. She was real active, but again, kind of closety, I would say, from my standards. But now that I just work with younger folks, sharing some of this race and digital space experience, like the folks here in San Diego are saying, even parts still today, you would imagine when we're having to be so dependent on the digital world, that there's not even internet there. And so all of that is kind of the same story, but yet more crucial now than ever, because obviously the planet has kind of become smaller. Like the first presentations in New York or about the Catskills, and then we're over here in Northern California, and then the second group that presented is in Southern California. So it's really cool to use it now. I see it as another creative medium, and then, yeah, I want to just again give thanks to the organization for jumpstarting us, and it has UC Santa Cruz now and the Arts Council of Santa Cruz. We're collaborating, and next, put this on your calendar too. I guess next summer 2023, second summer session, we're gonna have Maria Cortera is going to come with her group, and we're going to digitize. Yeah.
And Linda Garcia Merchant.
Oh, Linda. Hi, Linda. I can't see you, so I only see the speaker's view. So I didn't see you over there, but definitely, Linda, I'm looking forward to making some more of this pop and continue to unearth some of that, the magic that the family has left in their organizing and their own teaching and learning experiences on this planet, different generations. So
some of those, primarily the objects that we're looking at were photographs, some ephemera, again, also saved sort of even small scraps of paper and different objects that hold that sort of numinous memory-based value.
Like that's a picture of Dolores Huerta that my mom painted. She can't hardly hold a pencil anymore. So that came from like the 60s back in Stockton.
Yeah. Yes, again, trying to use the experiences of these 7 de la Riva women to both map to the 7 Mujerista principles that OSA has been establishing since what, like the late 90s, and trying to highlight those moments when they intersected with more well-known parts of the Chicano movement here in California. So a portrait of Dolores Huerta. Osa's mother saw her, while waiting for a bus early in the morning in Stockton, starting to organize with a few farm workers. I think it was before the founding of the UFW, and made a portrait and turned out to be Dolores Huerta. She spoke with her later and she could see this painting. A mural, a dedication of a mural that's since been whitewashed in Hayward, that was in part dedicated to Aunt Sally, that Osa was mentioning earlier, a really profoundly powerful, closeted queer woman who was a teacher as well. She helped her students tremendously, offering some, alternative artistic expressions to get them to sort of do some internal mining that wasn't really very accessible at that time. So lots of, poetry, drawing, things like that. And then this mural that was whitewashed in Hayward, but she took a photo of it and it was in her home. So this is a photo of a photograph that was framed in her home. The contribution that Osa made to Madre Tierra Press, which is a project of Linda Vallejo that came out of the Women's Building down in Los Angeles. Again, a relatively well-known, not quite Chicano project, but a feminist project, and one that's better known, and again, looking at where they intersected. And then, some sort of older examples. This is Osa's grandmother. I believe she's on the right, her husband, and we're not quite sure who the third person is, celebrating the Fiestas Patrias in Northern California. And that man in the center, Osa's grandfather, was responsible for founding a Latino literary society in Berkeley in the 1930s. And they regularly held those Fiestas Patrias celebrations in Northern California. So just some examples of the 80 or so objects that we were able to digitize and put onto the site. There's a lot more sort of film and audio recordings that I know that Osa and the team will continue to populate the site with. And lots of other opportunities for the descriptions that are available for each of the objects beyond just the metadata. They're not, the site doesn't allow, I think it's maybe 100, 150 words, but Maria Cotera has the full text. That was the primary way that we were sort of going to share, the information with the public on the site. So, and Maria Cotera makes sure to, I know that she uses this site and makes it available for her students and the students within her department, and it's also available to the general public. It's really accessible in terms of like being able to email and ask for additional material that hasn't been made public. And so she has the full text for all of the objects to be able to offer them to folks who are interested in using some of this material for whatever they'd like. So I think we'll end it there.
Yes, so that we have a chance to have questions at the end.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So we'll jump to our fourth presenters, our fourth set of presenters. So the team is led by Lilia Raquel Rosas, ML Trucks, and Araceli Lara. The title of the project is Tejana Historias, Indigenous Indentions and Transfrontera Transformations. I think we gave you, okay, fantastic.
Buenas tardes, everybody. I hope you all are doing well. I unfortunately, finally, as I say, the Rona hit me, and I just am recovering from COVID. I'm COVID clear, but my presentation is actually going to be brief and more informal than perhaps some of the rest. I was thinking and excited about this and thinking of it as in terms of just a show and tell. So Araceli is with us. ML could not join us. Their child is suffering from a cold. And so I said, don't worry about it. It's okay. We got this. So Tejana Historias de Indigenous Indentations and Transfrontera Transformations would not be possible if it were not for all of the folks here who have mentored all of us. So I will acknowledge again their names: Gabby, Lorena, Linda, and también Carolina. The fact that USLDH grants and aid took a risk with something that really was just a lot of ideas, and then said, no, you got this. Enabled us, and specifically enabled me to really think through what I wanted this to look like. And I also want to acknowledge my comadre, Sara Rafael Garcia, who was a previous Grants and Aid recipient, who told me to apply, because I honestly was like, I don't know. I don't think I have anything new to share. And she's like, you have tons of things to share. What are you talking about? And you keep asking me about digital humanities. So why don't you go learn from these people? They are the best. And so Tejana Historias really was something I started to fixate on, or we could say its proto version existed in a class I created called Tejana Cultural Studies. The class was titled that way. I never wanted to title it. I wanted to title the class Tejana Historias. For lots of logistical reasons, that wasn't possible. That class is upper division undergraduate, essentially seminar, where students take a deep dive in thinking about Tejana history and Tejana Historias and Tejana studies, with an acknowledgement that in fact, our scholarship at this point is rich and continues to unfold in ways that, as someone who has also been part of that scholarship, would not have anticipated 20 years ago. So in thinking through what I've done in that class, I thought, well, what would this look like in a digital humanities space? What are the frustrations have I encountered, not only as an educator, but as, you know, in other moments, and I still call myself a student, as a student, you know, where do we find all this information? What do we do in a place like Texas, where critical race theory, ethnic studies, reproductive rights, you name it, are in constant attack? And rather than simply be reactive, say, look, we exist, we have always existed. Our knowledge is our knowledge bases, who we are, that information has existed. There is no paucity of information at this point. There's just more ways of knowing, learning, and really hearing from each other. So why don't we put it out there? And so I kept telling Gabi, Lorena, Linda, and whoever else that listened that I wanted to do a timeline. That was it. That's all I thought I was going to do. Because I really didn't think I had the skill set to create anything. But what was beautiful about this journey is that I through their mentorship, through consultation, what we finally ended up doing was creating a website. And I created the website, something I thought I'd never do. Tejana Historias net. It draws inspirations from places like Chicana por mi raza, Mapping the Violence, which is a project of Monica Munoz, for example. I worked in a platform that I was already familiar with, which was Google. I did this because I consulted with someone and she said, just work with what you know. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I was already housing all our stuff in Google. So here's just a view. I have lots of tabs open of our Google Drive, right? It's already dumping everything here. So it made it easy to then translate it. The website consists of just a very brief introduction. It is more academic ease, but I think I wanted to just make sure to establish my authority and the authority of us in this working group. Before we even got to the website, we actually launched just an Instagram, because this is what I had done in a previous digital humanities project, because really I wanted to reach out to a specific demographic. I didn't want to do the Twitter route. And I know there are folks who love Twitter and you all are amazing, but that to me is like the writer route. I didn't want to do the Facebook route because that to me represents people, I'm middle-aged, so people, me and older, like my mom, who love Facebook. And I knew that through my students, along with TikTok, which Araceli will attest, did try to convince me to go the TikTok route. I was not ready. I thought, well, at least with the Instagram route, we can start to dump this information as we're sorting it. And so that's what we started to do. We started to, and it was mostly me, curate and preview what we were going to do on the website. And in the website, along with the introduction, I explained that our goal is to create 7 timelines. They're there. Y'all can check them out later. I know we're running out of time and energy, so I'll leave it brief. But the first one we were able to create was indigeneity y tierra natal. I used many of the same digital platforms that you all have seen already. Timeline JS is amazing. I made sure there was an introduction. The mentors at USLDH, as I'm going to call you, las mentoras, made sure to remind me that everything should be framed, and I absolutely agree. So I'm not going to go through all the different entries, but hopefully you all will check them out and really just kind of establish, in thinking through Tejana history, for example, through an indigenous lens, what is it that I want to understand from a decolonial vantage point? Was what I kept asking myself. How can we disrupt this idea that indigenous people have disappeared when we know full well we haven't? We're here. Y luego, the other thing was to ensure that, of course, credit was given where credit was due. So along with US LDH, Latino Studies, my own department also was really crucial. This is what allowed me to employ the people who were part of the working group. And then in thinking about my students once again, who will tell me, well, I don't know where to find this. I thought, you know, just a simple, straightforward bibliography where folks can finally say, okay, here's the stuff. You want to know where the stuff is? It's literally here. And the last thing, if we click through this, but I'm not going to, I have it open. Also, to kind of continue my argument that there's no paucity of information. And this is straight inspiration from the Recovery Project. I created just a list of all the different things that we use, all the different primary sources, all the different secondary sources to put this all together. That this stuff actually has been digitized by other people who have way more money than we do. And it exists, and all we're doing is curating it, providing framing, really thinking through what does it mean for us through the lens of Tejana Historias. So I will just leave it there and ask Araceli if there's something that you wanted to add, and I'm going to just go ahead and go back to her first. Well, I'll leave it on our Instagram because it's kind of fun. So Araceli, I don't know if you want to add something.
Just from a student slash like now like graduate point of view, it was really difficult to find it. Like I was comparing my research as I went to simple Google searches. And if you just Google like, oh, like Texas history, a lot of it just starts from when Texas joins the United States. And it was difficult to find information about Texas in the 1700s. And I kept getting frustrated. And I remember it wasn't until months into this project that I brought this up to Lilia, and we sat and went through Lilia's bibliography, and we found a section in Texas Women, which was a book that Lilia had already annotated. And I found information about Texas, like relations between the indigenous people and Spaniards, even strategies that the indigenous people used to survive. It was really interesting, like the San Saba attack that happened in the 1758. There was no information about that on Google. Even when you do specific Google searches, so it just speaks to the importance of the resources that Lilia is making a lot more accessible. And as a student, I wish I would have thought harder about these things, but now I don't have to because Lilia already made it easy to find.
Thank you, Araceli. And one more thing I want to acknowledge is Araceli is also our artist. And so she designed the logo, which you see here. There's a different logo we use on the Instagram because I haven't decided. We may have many logos. We may make t-shirts, quién sabe. But the point being that the other thing was I wanted to engage in strategies of as much transparency as possible in this project. Like you can do this too. And in our acknowledgements, not only acknowledge the institutions, the people who mentored and fund us, but also, give credit to Araceli, give credit to this here, which is the site of the White Shaman mural, which is the sacred site of the indigenous people of Tejas, who absolutely engaged in history making and engaged in documenting their own stories through the petroglyphs that exist not only in the White Shaman mural, but in many other places. And so to make sure that there's not this like, well, I don't know where this comes from or where did we gather this? So I will end it there. And I want to also say, since I'm the last one, I really, really loved hearing from all of you all. You all were amazing and inspiring. So I'm going to go ahead and mute myself.
Wonderful. Yay, we heard all the presentations until now. Wonderful. Thank you all for the sharing, your experience, for inviting your collaborators to speak on the project. We'll now open the floor to questions from each other. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. We have also prepared a few questions here that we can start jumpstart the discussion. But if somebody has a question already, they feel free to unmute yourselves. So, are there any questions here from our audience? No. Yeah, go ahead, Cristina.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I am absolutely inspired by all of these really wonderful projects. It's really great to see such amazing work coming together. And I had a question. It's a little bit for everybody, but mostly for those of you working both with personal archives or archives that are held, like the Chicano Park project, that are held outside traditional institutional repositories. And I guess my question is, I was curious about the balance. I was so inspired with the Chicano Park project about the commitment to keeping the archives and the history located and accessible to the community firsthand, right? While also recognizing the challenges that it implies in terms of its preservation, et cetera. And I was wondering how you sort of think a little bit, but if you could talk a little bit more about how you think about it in terms of like long-term future, the challenges of not having kind of large institutional support, and that commitment to keeping the repositories, the archives, the history, and the community, and how the process of having digital projects in a way is a way of like solving that problem, right, of accessibility for repositories that are outside large institutional sort of library archives. It just seems like, I guess I'm personally interested because it's a challenge, right? But it's a challenge that can be so powerful for us as groups, as communities, to really have power and control and of ownership, right, of our history.
Yeah, I think all of us over here at the Chicano Park Museum and Cultural Center have really thought about that. We do have our relationship with Dr. Pulido, and plus he's on the board of the museum. But we have other aspirations. As I said in the presentation, we're looking at a facility that used to be a library that the city was going to sell or tear down. And the city built that library a new institution. And we're trying to obtain that facility that will be our full-time archive. And we have come into some resources in the last year that we will be hiring a full-time archivist. In this facility, we will keep the Tommy Camarillo archives. And of course, we're scanning them right now to make sure that Tommy has her binders back. But we're looking at connecting to the online archive or international online archive. And then our relationships, like I said, with USD, UCSD, and of course, the University of Texas, because you all have kind of put the fire under our feet to move forward. So I think that's the beginning state. I have worked with the state archives in Sacramento, and so I feel like I have a good connection there as well in terms of connecting us to different places. But you know, everything's in the beginning stages and we're evolving. And thankfully we have Lucas here, who is looking at completing an education in librarianship / archiving. So we have a long range plan in that sense, but we're working one step at a time. And Pulido has his hand up, so I'm sure he has more to offer.
No, I just wanted to add everything that Josie is saying is important. But one of the things that we're convinced of, and we're not quite there yet, but Tommy has a methodology that we have to replicate. It didn't come from the academy. It didn't come from any art. It's an archivist that was grassroots that just had the ability to do something that if we didn't have it, we wouldn't have the story. So my point is that we want to go at it that way. Number one, the whole history of the park and reclaiming that space tells you a very different story about how you should do archival work. Number two, we don't have a high school in our community. People have to go outside. So how is it that you're going to embrace academia if there's really nothing there? So how do we bring those youngsters and people into our space and help with this work? So I mean, I could say more, but the question is a very important one, but I feel we're trying to do it in a way that is quote unquote non-institutional. Even though I represent an institution, I feel more at home in the neighborhood than I do here at this university. And I see it almost, how do I say, revolutionary to take money from this place and take it to the community, because that's basically the process here. And I don't see the institution really caring. I just think that I have a good story to tell and they want to give money. So anyway, I mean, I just think there's something really powerful about all that. And it all goes back to Tommy.
And I think the last thing, the fact that that Chicano Park was listed as a national landmark, then gives us cachet to be more in line with a national perspective with regard to the type of work that we're doing. And like Alberto said, many, and Lucas said as well, many of the surrounding institutions have approached Tommy over the years to obtain her collection, and she was not interested in those institutions obtaining it because then the community would not have access. So just to reflect back of Alberto's interest, but also Tommy's interest with her collection to make it accessible to the community.
Yeah, I was just gonna say one thing that I'd like to add is that, we never had money. We have everything we've done has just been grassroots. We've been organizing it. Tommy, I mean, I didn't get to share most of her experience, but she would go down the street. There was a warehouse that would be throwing away a lot of office supplies, and we'd hit them up and we built a relationship where they'd give us binders. They'd give us dividers. And I bring up these stories and the way that we've made everything happen is because whether or not we were able to get the sustained funding, we've thought of this question of long-term, like how do we preserve these pieces? We'd make it work. If it's getting just the scanner alone that was provided by the institution has been a great help, because it's showing us that one, we can restore a lot of these photos, we can fix it, we can organize them on a digital catalog while maintaining the ownership of it and allowing people in the community to come. We've been working here locally with our youth. We created a youth brigade, and with them, they're coming in and they're learning the importance of capturing oral histories of their family members. They're learning the importance of primary documents. And we're hoping that with them learning these and them pursuing their higher education, because most of them are high school students, they'll take an interest and come back and give their time and donate, because that's the spirit of the park. That's the spirit of everything in this community. It's all been just grassroots organizing. And even though it seems impossible, we make it happen, and it may take time, but time is free. So that's where we have the advantage.
And the last thing I'll say is that, as Alberto said, there's no public high school in this area. I mean, when I was growing up, I had to leave the area to go to San Diego High School. But in the last year, they've built kind of an educational complex. It's still charter. It's not a public school, it's charter. But where that library was that I'm describing to you, it's an old 1922 building. It's a Spanish style historic site. And there's money that's renovating it right now, but it butts up right against this whole educational complex that is K through 12. And what we've proposed, as Lucas was saying, is trying to find a way to get at least those charter kids to interface with what we're doing if we get that building. And even if we don't get the building, we'll do it here out of this building to interface so that those kids begin collecting the oral histories of their family. And you know, there's a lot of Central and South, you know, more Central Americans coming into this area. Barrio Logan Heights was traditionally, you know, Los Californios, and then it was a lot of Mexicanos. My family's been here since 1906, a big influx during the Mexican Revolution, primarily Mexicano, but the influx now is broader. You know, there's a lot of Salvadoreños, you know, Central America. And so we want them to start collecting their stories and look at this as an opportunity, as Lucas was saying. Maybe it's something they'll think about for a career, or maybe it's something that they will embody to preserve their own family's history and understand the significance of preservation.
I would just want to add that, I mean, I'm just mind blown. It's so inspiring. I just feel like there's so much to learn about the grassroots sort of a methodology and practice that you're all enacting. And to me, it was sort of also captured with this project of the mobile bus going into communities and carrying that history. I mean, that's just absolutely, absolutely beautiful. So thank you for sharing it.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Are there any other questions? I think this whole idea of thinking about the positionality, right, from where you're speaking, you know, who the communities that you're centering and validating that context, right, from where they're coming from. I see that in all of the projects that have been, you know, that were presented, and the, you know, the different projects and the different perspectives that you all brought to this. Maybe just a question for those of you who haven't answered, you know, what are like some of the ethical concerns that you're like grappling with in terms of like the communities that you're working with, because you're in a way speaking on behalf, right, of those communities. So maybe if you could just share a little bit of like some of the challenges associated with that. Yes.
I'll try to watch the time a bit. I'm kind of slow with that, but I'm just always, every time I get to participate with you, I'm like literally blown away. I'm so blown away, and it's so moving. And I think that, you know, being with a familia of dominant, you know, mujerista women all for several generations, I think that always encouraged me to be creative, and the next generations to be creative. So being part of the university, I mean, we could focus on the diseases that we have, but also, you know, what this is a celebration of our cultura and a continuation of I think, striving for ourselves and also for our family, blood familia and extended familia. And I think that extended familia is always part of it, of the fire to keep moving and keep having that breath. And then all of us here, it's just like a synergy that's just like, wow. I've had cancer twice. I'm a cancer survivor twice. I had it when I was 17 and when I was 60, and I'm still going. And my mom, I see her the same spirit. My Aunt Sally, the same spirit as well, and further back, and I think the key thing, the bus, I love the idea of course with the bus. You know, our family lost our home, for example. My mom, we lost our home in during the housing crisis, and what we did was we all reconvened, and I ended up staying in my van for 7 years. And at the same time, I was teaching at Berkeley and I was teaching at Davis, and I would come here to Santa Cruz because we were here since the 70s, several generations of lesbianas of color raising our children. And all that different kind of narrative, I always knew it was at odds personally and politically with the institutions. But now this whole museum and rewriting history and being able to finally have a voice, I can't tell. And that's the biggest challenge for me personally, is to try to represent the best we can with our family. And what secrets do you tell makes us vulnerable? What do we tell and what don't we tell of the family? You know, my mom dealt with, you know, domestic violence for 10 years and the contradictions of being in a Catholic school and then, you know, keeping that undercover. And then my tia with her sexuality and all of this, the whole sexuality thing with us as women. I feel that, you know, I had to kind of take the leap to just say, you know what? I'm coming out. I can't help it. I can't go back in the closet at this point. And I think that being able to use that strand as a way of liberation for myself, but also for the women in my family, I think that it's really important to take those challenges. And something like Chicana por mi raza has also fueled the fire. And then you find the technicians like Erendina and different, Maria Elena Chavez, who's here, you know, she was raised with the UFW and it's just magic. I can't even hardly explain. I just hope we're doing the right thing. I'm trying. I know I step on people's toes and interrupt and speak too long, but we're still using it in the class. We just used it, you know, this last 5 weeks at UC Davis. As much as I can, I'm going to continue to try to push all of your beautiful work. And thank you for, I know what a struggle it's been. I've stayed in my van because I was trying to pay storage. Like those were my, just, you know, having to make. So now just real quick, I'll give 2 pitches. The one about UC Santa Cruz, because we were going there and I kind of got kicked out of that program and a history and a PhD, but then I go to USC and they were, the Bill and Melinda Gates gave me a scholar. They were the first, you know, we were in the beginning class in 2000. So I was able to become get a PhD. Then Stanford acquired, which we're so grateful, my mom's archives, but then different librarians say, you know, what's the politics of having it in the institutions where it's not as accessible maybe for 10 or 15 years, as opposed to, again, something like Chicana por mi raza that's instant and being utilized in our day of age, you know, our day and age. So that's it. I don't know. I have so much to say, but thank you all. I love you all. Thank you so much. Thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Lilia or Cristina, do you want to add anything else? Go ahead.
I can add a little bit. I think, I mean, with Tejana Historias, ¿verdad? We haven't gotten to the, since I am working chronologically, we haven't gotten to maybe the contemporary kind of considerations. In indigeneity timeline, there are entries that have to do with the present, but they're more about collective kind of remembrances and accountabilities. So in that respect, we haven't had to deal with the ethics, but I think it is always important, not only through my experience with the Tejana Historias project, but with a different project I'm a part of, is I think for me, it's about transparency, allowing and always keeping the lines of a communication of accountability, ability to be humble and just change your mind. You know, if someone says, no, you know what, I don't want that there, then accepting that, right? So I don't have a clear stated list of kind of principles, but I think the most important thing is always just be honest with your intentions, honest with your goals, and honest about where this is going to exist in the world. If one is using this and is the curator of it. I think when you're a curator of communities, there's a different kind of negotiation, but specifically of peoples, then I think we want to be attentive to them. And I think Linda put something in the chat.
Oh, it's about the fundraiser, but
Thank you, Linda. I wanted to add to that just one last thing, that there is, like, Barrios Unidos, Santa Cruz is really small, and I had my love-hate relationship with UC Santa Cruz, but connecting with Barrios Unidos, who we all went to school, the founder over here in Santa Cruz, Nane Alejandres, and his wife of many years, we're all still working together. So hopefully that's why we want to bring people from other campuses as well, UCLA and Berkeley and, you know, the centers here in Watsonville, and keep that community connection alive as the real vein, the real heart of all of this.
I just did want to say one thing. First of all, thank you all for this amazing work, all of you. Having been here through most of the cycle of this, it's really wonderful to see where your project started, where you ended these projects, and how all of you, and I mean this is all 9 of you, are thinking about not just the community that you're presenting, but the community that you're representing. The fact that there are some of you in the academy, some of you in the community, all working in this sort of holistic way, and that you're all thinking towards the future, that you want to do more. Like this is, for some of you, well, actually for all of you, this is a proof of concept you can now take out and apply for larger amounts of money. And the fact that you're looking at students as part of the labor pool for this, not just acknowledging their work, but the mentoring and teaching and training that you're giving them in archival practices, in digital publication, in digital production, all the kinds of elements that they can take forward and find ways within the academy, going on to college, going on to graduate school, to apply them. And I think that all of you are carrying this wonderful USLDH spirit, not just with you all directly related to the grants, but all of the community that you're representing. So thank you for that. Thank you for coming to my
Are there
TED
any other comments from our speakers before we close out? No? Well, thank you all. We really appreciate, you know, having the opportunity to showcase your work. Like Linda said, it's amazing for our team, for USLDH, to have been part of your journey in all of these projects. We know that these seeds have been planted, and they will definitely grow into robust trees that will generate a lot of funding support. We're happy to see new generations of scholars, you know, being, acknowledged and built out and trained, right, to become leaders in this field. I acknowledge the work of Helvetia before we recorded. I want to have it recorded on here. Helvetia is one of our founding board members of the Recovering the U.S. Hispanic Literary Heritage Program. She was a librarian who helped us set the foundation for metadata for incorporating the library studies and foundations into the work. And I am eternally grateful for some of her leadership and some of in the way she laid some of this foundation for us, because of all of that, we're able to have a lot of metadata and a lot of materials that we can now use to continue doing the work for USLDH. And so I should also acknowledge the Mellon Foundation for their funding, the University of Houston, Arte Público Press, Dr. Nicolás Canelos, my colleagues, Lorena, Carolina, Linda. We hope that, you know, we continue to plant the seed that the newer generations get to use this work. And I know that we're all for the better for it, because our Latino communities are being visibilized, and ya aquí estamos y no nos vamos, ¿verdad? Bueno, we will make this available at a later time, hopefully in the next few weeks on YouTube, and we'll let you know when this is live so that you can share and tweet it and put it on Instagram and all that good stuff. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be in community with all of you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Adios.
Bye.